John, almost picked the score right on the money. I picked 27-24 Saints. It ended up being 26-24 Cleveland. So, you know what? It's almost my Buddy D moment of the day. You know, it was almost you covered the game. Saints didn't end up winning that football game, but right off the bat, I think what you look at this football team is they get almost 400 yards total offense in this football game. And for a quarter, you did absolutely nothing in the first quarter. Jimmy Graham had the one play that the ball went right through his hands for the interception and the score, but he had a signature game. 10 catches, 118 yards, 2 scores, and one of them that signature catch right at the end of the half.
Well, the overall picture, if you look at the way the Saints played in this football game, you're right. They started out very slow offensively and really basically picked it up in the second half. Second half, the Saints showed up why they're capable of being one of the top teams in the NFC. You're right about the interception that Drew threw. He kind of went off his hands a little high, but Drew also got hit on the play. Kind of misdirected the pass play to him. What shocked me was Colston not catching a pass, nor getting one thrown his way. Cooks had 3 receptions. They're still trying to get him the football. The running game was there, Mike, 2 weeks in a row. You can say what you want. That Saints running game has been coming around, but they lose Ingram now for about a month, and we'll see what happens. I don't know how to look at this football game other than to say they let this one get away from them.
They got beat by a football team. Be lucky to win 6 games all season long. You rush for over 170 yards, and John, up until the start of the 2014 season, this football team had only lost 3 games when they rushed for over 122 yards or more in a game. Now they've rushed for over 125 yards back-to-back games and lost both of them. The running game has been there. That offensive line's really been the biggest improvement in the running game part of it. They just haven't been able to piece anything together. And you know, to be honest with you, almost you looking for a heartbeat on this football team. Something has got to trigger this football team to play more inspired football, especially on defense. Now bring it up, where are your playmakers? With Kenny Vaccaro, with Jarvis Byrd, with Keenan Lewis, with Junior Gillette, with Cameron Jordan. Your playmakers that you paying a lot of money and much as expected have not shown up. And it's not just Patrick Robinson get beat, because when they replaced him with Corey White, they went after him, and Keenan Lewis got nothing to say either. They're going after him. Also, it's a football team that's losing by committee.
Mike, you know as well as I do, when they went to the offseason this past year, they wanted to improve their secondary. And we all thought, yes, you know, maybe they got some better players than in the secondary part, but I'm still sitting there thinking, they're no comparison to the Seattle Seahawks, where they said, we need to get like those guys in the second. Well, you don't bring in 6'2", you know, 6'1" DBs, 220 pounds. You're still bringing in smaller DBs and guys you think that can cover and play. We don't see that in the secondary. And like you said, Lewis has not showed up this season. Vaccaro has played some times that he's played well, but not on an overall picture. And then in the pass rushing department, this defensive, they're not getting the turnovers. You need pass rushers to get in there to help you guys make some turnovers. They're not getting the turnovers, and we said this for the last couple of seasons. You don't get turnovers on defense. It's hard to shorten the field down for the Saints to get in there and do things offensively. And then you flip it over to the offense and look, Drew didn't have a great football game. He had an adequate game, but it wasn't a great game, the Drew Brees type football games you want to see. Offensively, they're running the football, but I still say at the end of the game, if he don't take a sack, they kick the field goal, Saints win that football game.
Other thing too is, as bad as you played on defense back-to-back weeks, you just think about it. This football team came within a whisper, so to speak, of winning both games. I mean, that goes to show you how the NFL is, and we saw it Monday night too. Man, I watched the Eagles play defense. I watched the Colts play defense. I don't know which worse. I mean, there's a couple of teams that have pretty good defenses in this league, but most teams are built for offense, put points up on the board. Now you're playing a Minnesota team without Adrian Peterson, with a quarterback that's even more erratic than Brian Hoyer. And you know what? You got to take care of business this week. And I know that point spread's jumped up big now. It's 10.5 points. They know the Saints play really well at home, but they got to find some fire somewhere. They got to find a spark that puts this team on the right track. So far, they haven't found it.
Well, Mike, you know the rules dictate basically for offense. People go out and get as much offensive firepower they can get. And you know as well as I do, when your defense is sitting out there knowing that the rules, basically with the penalties even as much now, calling so many penalties, your defenses are all going to be in trouble this season. So I don't care what they say about the top defenses in the league. They're still probably giving up yardage, maybe not points. But overall, the Saints have to come into this dome. And you know as well as I do, when they play in the Superdome, things go their way. They have to put a team away. And it can't be a close ball game. They've had a chance to win in Atlanta. kick a field goal at the end, they lose. Same thing happened in Cleveland, kick a field goal and you lose. You're still in the football game. This is one, Mike, they need to go out this week and put it on to a team that's struggling right now, who's got issues, and we all know what the issues are with AP back there. But overall, the Saints must go into this game at home, win, and win big, Mike, to be able to get that monkey off their back and say, we're as good as anybody in the league.
It's cliche, but you got to take this one game at a time.
Correct.
You can't come back from that 0-2 deficit. You know, remember last year, Carolina gets to an 0-2 start. They end up winning the division because they got hot late in that football game. You know, the crazy thing about it is we talked about this in the offseason. People made a big thing. Well, Carolina, you know, all the new receivers that they had. Only thing I know what plays right in the NFL, a good defense. I see with Carolina and Arizona, first week with Carolina, no Cam Newton, and Cam comes back. Arizona with Drew Stanton at quarterback. They end up winning. It goes to show you a great defense like what Arizona has, and they got injuries too, and Carolina has, you can win on the road. It's a disturbing trend for the Saints. Back-to-back weeks on the road, can't put a team away.
Well, the thing about Carolina is the two teams they beat, they probably, with a healthy team and a good Cam Newton in there, they probably should have beaten, and they did. Whereas the Saints, Atlanta, that's a toss-up. But Cleveland, they should have won. You know, you can say Saints could be no worse than 1-1. Carolina, they're 2-0. Their toughest part of their schedule is coming up. But you're right, though. They've done it with fresh faces on the secondary. I mean, the receiving core, but that defense. And if you got a good defense, keeps you in the ball game. You know as well as I do. If you're in the ball game, let's just see. Cleveland was still in the ball game at the end of the game. Got a chance to win the football game. That's the thing with Carolina. With the Saints, and like you said, Arizona's good defense with a backup quarterback. Overall, the Saints need to put teams away, and it needs to start this week against Minnesota Vikings.
I know individually you really feel bad for Mark Ingram. He had a great training camp. He goes down with the hand injury, but I think that's going to be adequately filled by Kyrie Robinson, Pierre Thomas, Darius Cadet. I think those guys are going to fill that role really well, and I think the Saints running game continues to roll on. We'll have a lot more here on the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford. We'll be right back.